y'all, welcome to Geeking Out Overtime. This is a special bonus edition of Geeking Out, and today I have the absolute pleasure of geeking out with Amanda Brock, CEO of Open UK and organizer of State of OpenCon. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you very much, Adriana.
Now, I know that organizing a conference is no easy feat, so I'm totally dying to hear what that's all about. But first, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what ultimately led you to organize State of OpenCon not just once, but twice?
I'm obviously a fool. I didn't learn the first time. As well as being a fool, I used to be a lawyer, and I was a lawyer for about 25 years. 16 years ago, almost exactly, give or take a handful of days, I joined a company called Canonical, and I'd been a tech lawyer, a commercial lawyer. Joined Canonical. I think everybody really expected me to just come in and be a corporate person in an open source environment. And I absolutely fell in love with open source, which was entirely unexpected. I met a group of people who I felt at home with for the first time in my life, really. And I guess the rest is almost history in terms of my engagement with open source. 4 years ago, I was involved in the setup of Open UK. I'm probably considered a founder as well as being the CEO. And last year, we organized in 10 weeks our first State of OpenCon. So I have to say, it feels much more chilled this year. And everybody keeps saying to me, like, you must be really last minute conference. And we are, but just the luxury of knowing what you're doing has made it much easier. And I've got a fantastic team who are really supporting.
So, doing it for the first time last year, like, how does it compare to doing it this year? I mean, I'm sure there's like all sorts of lessons learned. So what were the kinds of things that, you encountered last year where you're like, "Oh my God," and this year like, "I got this."
The biggest single difference is what I just mentioned is the team. So last year, it was very much my vision. I was driving it. And it came down to one of my board members, Matt Jarvis, who's at SNCC. Matt had said in a board meeting, we should organize our own conference, Amanda. He doesn't even remember saying it. So I was like, okay, I've got to go to organize a conference. So I did. And we worked with a couple of big sponsors. One of them came on board a little bit slower than we'd hoped, but got us into a position where 10 weeks before we had this opportunity to use a major London venue right opposite the House of Parliament, but we could only have the specific dates, which happened to coincide with FOSDEM, which is something I wanted. And Free and Open Source Developer European Meetup, probably the best open source conference in the world, I would say, much better than mine. We are part of the fringe of FOSDEM, which I'm really proud to be part of. So it was such a difficult decision. Do you do this in 10 weeks, which is clearly crazy, or do you miss that opportunity to have that venue, do it in July, and also miss the opportunity to be sort of an add-on to FOSDEM, and also from both a sustainability and a budgetary perspective to get the international folks while they're in Europe? And that really matters, bringing that global community into one place to have the kind of conversations we're having, which are unusual conversations. So that sort of drove us to it. So there's this big picture. It was just difficult, to be quite honest. At the time, you don't realize how difficult it is. But this year, doing what would be a normal conference process, which is hard, is nowhere near as bad. Plus, there's a few of the team were part of the team last year. So they also know what they're doing. And something that is really important to me is that the conference, Open UK, everything we do has to have life beyond me. So the team now own it. So I keep being told that, oh, so-and-so is speaking at the conference. I've got no idea. There's 180, nearly 190 speakers. And Andy Piper is a speaker liaison, and Chloe was managing Session Eyes initially. And there's a CFP committee for each track, and there are CFP chairs and room hosts. They've chosen the content. They've managed it all. I honestly, I've looked at it, but I don't know it the way you would if you were the person who's going through every speaker and liaising with them. And I think that's a really healthy and good thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. To be able to delegate all the things and trust people, right? Because like
Yeah.
without the trust, you end up taking on too much and then burn out, right?
Well, the last year it took me ages to recover. And now I can
Wow.
tell you that I'll be recovered in a week or two, if that. I might not even need that. Whereas last year I went away after it. And I mean, I'm not young, and I was working 20-hour days the week before the conference last year. It was the only way to get it over the line. That took weeks to.
Yikes.
Yeah, yeah. But
That
this year,
is absolutely brutal.
it was brutal. It was brutal. But in my naivety, and I have organized lots of events, not just in tech over the years, but in my naivety, I had booked the biggest venue the money I'd raised so far would afford to bring as many people as possible together and to do as much as we could. And then I had gone out and raised I think I raised 300,000 in 10 weeks. So the total we raised last year was 500,000. And then it dawned on me that some of the key sponsors I've worked with over the years had invested in me in this conference and in Open UK. What if nobody turned up? What if it was terrible? And to be honest, I couldn't stop working. I was just terrified because that would have
Yeah.
been huge. That would have been, such a devastating thing to happen. And I should have been more confident in the people around me, in that when you've got that kind of community pulling together, we've got an amazing advisory board who are all helping to pull this together. You've got this, last year we had 135 speakers. So you've got all of them who are bringing their communities with them. Then you've got all the different people who are table holders and things. So there is an ecosystem that is inherent to open source and that collaboration and that community that I didn't realize how much I could trust. And I think
Yeah,
this,
yeah, for sure.
right. So this year I've learned that lesson and we're trusting them.
That's so great, and I mean, it really goes to show, like, the power of having connections and community, and really having, like, a core group of people who not only you trust, they trust you, and they believe in you, and that's going to help elevate your success as well, right?
It does. And I don't know if you know James Governor at Red Monk. He wrote a fantastic blog about us last year and he described it as a tech conference that women wanted to go to. And I think that from day one, we have ensured that there is a diversity in the people who are hosting, who are the CFP chairs, in a way you wouldn't normally get. And there is this sort of sense of this is a place that I'm meant to be. This is okay for me to be in, and everybody's welcome. So it's not, in any way exclusionary to anybody who doesn't fit those diversity categories. It is very much about everybody belonging. But what we found last year was almost 50% of our attendees weren't white. I've never seen that in tech. I don't think I've ever seen that in a conference in the
Wow.
UK. And then I think it was about 36% of our speakers weren't men. I know that we're over 40% this year. And again, that's not
Wow.
normal in tech, right? And I see
Yeah.
some names flicking through of the people who are signing up, and there's lots of women in there. And I think that changes the vibe. It's a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
warm, really friendly atmosphere, and there's a lot of energy to it.
That's so great, and it's funny because, like, I think back to, like, my most fun and most productive teams have always been the ones where there's so much more diversity, right? Because everyone has, like, different perspectives. We're all, like, the only thing we have in common is that we're all so different, and so we all bring something very cool to the table.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I really like that. And we did last night a walk round, so it really is this huge community. We have about 60 volunteer staff, and Sam and Kim, who organised the staff, they sort of took over the venue for an hour or two last night, showed them all around. So I have my staff T-shirt on. I don't know if you can read it. It says All Stars. That kind of engagement is really unusual, and you see the sort of ecosystem evolution happening in front of your eyes as somebody gets engaged, and they might be scanning people into a room at their first conference, and then they decide they want to get involved in one of the committees or one of the advisory boards or to do something more in the organization, and they start to bring in their ecosystem and their friends and their colleagues. And now we have things like meetups. Last night we had our first Glasgow one. We've got two in Scotland now. And Jennifer Riggins, who writes for the New Stack, has just sort of come in and managed the London one. So I rarely go to it. And that's almost intentional, to let her own it and to have its own character with nothing to do with me. And it is really great to see that start to build and communities of people come together. Because in open source, we don't really think about the geographic. We really collaborate globally. I keep explaining to politicians and policy people here who want to learn that we are actually the global tech sector. We're like this submarine floating along under the digital economy. And we're more likely to know somebody from our homes anywhere across the UK in the Bay Area than we are who works in tech, who lives 6 doors down. It's just bizarre, but that's our network, that's our engagement. So I think there's a real pride for people in the UK that we have that international community and those international speakers coming to join us and really host them, and they're our guests, and we want to have an opportunity to convene these big conversations.
And it really shows, like, as you said, like, it's a good representation of open source, right? Because, I think long before this idea of, like, working remotely became fashionable,
Yeah.
we have been doing that in the open source community for a really, really long time, and it's so cool to have that kind of representation then in your conference, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I think one of the things that's going to be quite unusual, and we did achieve last year, is that, my background's legal. So you have all of these people who contribute to open source, and you have all these people who are trying to understand it in the legal and policy area. And then you've got the business people, and then you've got the sort of engineering community, and they normally go to different events. I mean, I love FOSDEM, but it's mainly engineers. You go to something like Open Source Summit North America that Linux Foundation run, and it's mainly business types. And what we're trying to do is cut across all of that and bring everybody into one space, because having those conversations with that diverse group, and I mean diverse disciplines, so the business people, the engineers, the lawyers, the policy people all in one space, is really informative and really helpful. And we're sort of taking it a step further where UK government hasn't created regulation yet around AI. But of course, open source is right at the center of the conversation on AI last year, still is. We're expecting a couple of things. So there's a rumor that the European AI Act will come out tomorrow. There's a UK House of Lords investigation paper is going to come out tomorrow afternoon, and we issued a report today, which we haven't shared widely yet. We'll do that tomorrow. And in the UK, we still have opportunity, and we have opportunity to influence where the regulation goes, if there is any, on AI and open. And we've actually agreed with the main government department, DCIT, who do digital legislation, and the Home Office at Innovate UK, who do investment, that they're all coming to the conference. And the Home Office and DCIT are coming in listening mode so that they can do direct consultation. So if you're an attendee at State of OpenCon, you can go and sit in a room in the afternoon for an hour and speak to either the Home Office or DCIT, and they will listen to you about how open source works. They'll listen to you about what open source does. They'll listen to you about your role. They'll listen to your views on AI and how openness fits with that. And I don't think any other government departments anywhere in the world have done anything like this, where they have gone direct to the community, not the sort of appointed or self-appointed leaders, but the actual community of contributors. And I think it's really important, because when we look at all of these processes, you see, that the lobbyists and the policy people who invest millions and billions into influencing it, you don't often see the community being heard.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so cool because, as you said, it's like such a rare thing to have that interface between politicians and the actual folks on the ground, and to
Yeah,
give that opportunity is, like, honestly priceless. And
yeah.
and so, like, anybody attending the conference, whether they're from the UK or, like, international, like, they can come in and voice their opinions.
Absolutely. And it will be a case of the number the room holds. The first group that make it in there will be the ones that do that session, and there'll be 4 sessions over the 2 afternoons of the conference. I haven't really talked about money. I talked about the fact we raised a lot of money, and we've done the same this year. And that's to enable us to put on, we use Linux Foundation conferences as our benchmark. We want to be as good as that. They are a state of the art that we don't generally have in the UK. So we try to lift the UK to that level. And it's expensive. And normally tickets for something like that are $1,000. So we charge 199 sterling across the board. There's no discounted tickets. It's 199. However, if your employer can't afford that or won't afford it for you, or you don't have one, we have 100 tickets for students. We have 100 tickets for the unemployed and 100 tickets for community. We also are very careful when speakers don't need codes and things to reallocate those into the community so that people can come and not have to pay. So it changes the atmosphere because it allows anybody who really wants to be there, irrespective of their personal wealth situation or funding. And I think that's quite different.
Yeah, and especially too, like conferences are such a great place to network. So, when if you find yourself in a position where you're unemployed or you're a student who's about to graduate and is looking for employment or a summer job or whatever, it's such a great way to like meet cool people. And there's so many like cool chance encounters
Yeah.
at conferences too, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I know a lot of people from the privilege of having been able to go and speak at conferences when I was in Canonical, and it's sort of built from that. So I've known people 15, 16 years where I have really strong relationships, and they're old friends now. But this enables that opportunity for people who maybe can't travel the way that I have. You've got a room with 50 different tables that range. I think it's Open Tofu's first conference table through to somebody like Gnome or Rust Foundation, the more established. We've got a couple of UK organisations who promote digital inclusion. We've got businesses there. We've got Eleuther AI. We've got Stability AI. So there's a whole range. The AI Alliance. There's a whole range of people going to be there, and we've facilitated that with one of those traditional sort of booth crawl competitions where you get your card stamped and go into a draw. But it gives people, even if they're not comfortable walking up to a stranger, a reason to go up and have a conversation and start, saying hello. And I'm slightly obsessed with the hanging out in the corridor. So we don't have, you arrive and you have a break before you start with breakfast, and then you've got quite a full few hours, and then you've got a lunch break, and then you've got a couple of hours, and you've got an hour in the afternoon rather than a 15-minute coffee break. And you could say it's because the British like a cup of tea, but I think it's actually more to do with, for me, with just giving people the opportunity to be together. And we have a wonderful community photography project that ARM sponsored for us, and we'll hang some of the pictures. But the photographer Tiana is there, and she'll do free headshots for people. And that's built out this sort of look and feel of these cool black and white photos that anybody can access. Boeing will be there, and they've got this simulator. I didn't get to do it last year, and I really want to do it, where you can walk on the moon and you can fly a plane. So, there's fun stuff to do as well. And there's also O'Reilly are on board this year, and they have done, I think we've got 5 O'Reilly authors in my legal book, where we're doing 25 book copies giveaway. And then the authors are all going to be there to sign the books. So there's lots
That
happening.
is so cool. Wow, that's so cool. It sounds like, it's so nice because it sounds like such a thoughtful and like inclusive conference. It definitely sounds like the type of conference I would love to attend someday.
Well, you should come next year. We have podcasters, and we've got a couple of people like Anais Ulrich who do YouTubing and things who'll be around, recording stuff. But you should come and join us next year.
Oh,
I'm
that
sure
would be awesome. I hope I can convince my employer to send me.
you should, because I'm sure there's lots of geeking out to be done with our crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there's like a lot of people attending your conference that I've interacted with over the last couple of years at various conferences. Like you mentioned Jennifer Riggins. I had her on my podcast recently. There's I seem to have been connected recently with a lot of folks in the UK in tech, so I would love to be able to like actually meet them in person.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I think we're having a moment, and post Brexit, it could have gone one way or the other. And there is a sort of British mentality, which, when I say British now, we're such a melting pot, right? We really are an international nation, but there is this long-term mentality of pushing forward and getting on with things. And I think post Brexit, that's happening here, and people are really pulling together. And we've seen that with the way Open UK has grown and the engagement we've had. I think lockdown helped in a way because it focused people on where they lived. And, we're really pulling together. So it doesn't surprise me. And I'll bet if you were to come and join us, that you would find a lot of people you didn't know were here or here.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely, that's on my conference bucket list now. I wouldn't even have known about this if, Colleen hadn't reached out,
Yeah.
for me to chat with you, and, I'm so happy to be able to do this because, one of the things that I really like to do on my podcast is really elevate, folks from all walks of life, and especially, tech is such a male dominated industry. And I really love to have lots of ladies on my podcast to be able to share their stories, share what they're up to, show the world that, um, you can look like us and be a badass. So I love having these opportunities to meet new people through this podcast.
That's fantastic. I'm sure you've met a lot of really interesting people. There are so many great people to talk to around the tech sector, and particularly the open tech sector.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, we are coming up on time, Amanda, but before we wrap up, I was wondering if you could share with our audience some words of wisdom on anything, whether it's like, putting together a conference or like
Mm.
life stuff, anything that you think would be valuable to folks.
Anything I think would be valuable. Oh my goodness, that's a big, big question. So, as the woman who just said that I did something crazy by year one organizing a conference in 10 weeks, we wouldn't have year two if we hadn't done year one. So, I'm going to say just do it. If an opportunity comes along, even if it feels like it's too hard, just do it and accept that you might not succeed. But if you don't, at least you've tried.
That is really great advice, and I think, yeah, I try to live by that mantra as well. Sometimes, it's like something comes up last minute, you're like, "Should
Yeah,
I? Should I not? Eh, what
go
the hell," right?
exactly. What the hell? Go
That's
for it.
awesome.
We should do.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for geeking out with me today. Y'all don't forget to check out the show notes and subscribe, and connect with us and our guests on social media. Until next time.
Peace out and geek out.
Geeking Out is hosted and produced by me, Adriana Villela. I also compose and perform the theme music on my trusty clarinet. Geeking Out is also produced by my daughter, Hannah Maxwell, who incidentally designed all of the cool graphics. Be sure to follow us on all the socials by going to bento.me/geekingout.